Would you read this prayer with us? Take, Lord, and receive all my liberty, my memory, my understanding, and my entire will, all I have and call my own. You have given it to me. To you, Lord, I return it. Everything is yours. Do with it what you will. Give me only your love and your grace. That is enough for me. Amen. You may be seated.
So we're going to release our kids, and Angela is going to be with them today. They're going to go outside and enjoy a little 60-degree weather, which is lovely. Lovely change. Have a good time, y'all. And yeah, come on up. We have a few things starting up here in September.
Hi, on Thursday, we're going to have our first Alpha of the season. It'll be at our house, 19 East 19th Street, 6 p.m. I think Ross and Barb are doing the first dinner, which is awesome. So we have, last week we did our little activity. We have 5 note cards, so maybe 5 invitations for Alpha went out. I think we can do better, so keep inviting this week. Something that they recommend in their teaching videos is if you're inviting someone, you can always offer to go with them. So we're happy to have any of you guys at our Alpha, especially if you want to bring a guest. You can just say, hey, we're doing this thing. I want you to come. I'll go with you. I'll pick you up. Make it as easy as you can.
Yeah, I had someone reach out to me this week who has a friend who was thought might be interested, and just was like, well, maybe I could come first time and sort of introduce people, which is normal to do in relationships. Adam and Rachel are starting a group the same night. They're going to be going through the Practicing the Way material from John Mark Comer, and their house is just a few blocks away. So if you've been someone who's been like, you know what, I would like to practice some of the things that Jesus did, because I don't do it so well on my own, you know? Or maybe you've been like hearing some of the things that Barb talks about, and you're like, maybe I'll try some of those things, or maybe there's something to that. She's not made it all up. And, you know, this is big for us, and also big is sort of uncomplicating spirituality in general. It is mystical, and we like to step into the mystery and embrace that, but also it's kind of practical. So I feel like Practicing the Way does a good job of inviting people in a real sort of logical way of, hey, how might I shape my life like the shape and rhythm of Jesus' life, and doing it together with some other people. Next week, we start our children's classes. We have a couple of different ones, and I think, you know, Simone's been saying we're still filling out the helper rosters there. We have a 3-year-old to kindergarten class, and then we have a 1st to 4th grade class. In the past, we've just had 3-year-old to 4th grade. That's a big range. So it would be really great to really staff these two, and it's really helpful so that there's space for them to wonder and to ask and to be curious about what God's doing in their lives. So today, the team from the Philippines that has arrived, they're all back and arrived now. We're opening the floor to them to share with us what God has done. This is an important, very important part of a community of faith, is naming, remembering, and saying, these are the things I saw. These are the people I related to, and the way that they were living, how it inspired me. So this is, in my opinion, probably more valuable than anything we would say in an expositional sermon. So the pressure is on. No, there isn't pressure, because the Holy Spirit was doing things, and you're just reporting what's been done.
Thank you, Benjamin. Well, it is really good to be back, and I must say I'm not quite in the right time zone yet, as it's, 4 o'clock in the morning and I'm cleaning things. You can think of us, but we're all getting back in the swing of things. But I just wanted to start out by thanking you all for supporting us. We took, a lot of you wrote cards, and you prayed and gave scriptures and wrote cards and things, and we took those and brought them to a church called Kitapawan in the Philippines, and we watched with delight as they opened those cards, and one of those even had a little bit of cash in it. Someone surprised him with cash, and it landed in just the right hand, so that was kind of cool to see. And we also had Sally made a whole bunch of little stones, beautiful blue stones, and she wrote the word hope on them, and we gave those out in that same congregation. So thank you for that. And also there were those of you that gave financially, and I think someone's going to mention that a bit later. But thank you. And I know you were all in touch with what was going on and were praying for us, and we really do appreciate it. And also, I'm going to kind of open us up, and then the different ones. There were 6 of us on the team, and everybody's going to come up and share a little bit. But I wanted to just bring greetings and love from our friends in the Philippines, because they think that WOW is this ginormous, huge, amazing community. Because it is. But But it's so interesting because they hear so much about wow, wow, wow. And so I bring you greetings from all the people there that we've been in contact with. And we're just honored to share a little bit of the journey that we've been on over the last, it was a 2-week trip. And it's a heart, I mean, I think we all come back with our hearts so full of all the learning that we receive. And so we're just going to try and unpack a little bit of that. But as you know, our church has been involved in the Philippines for many years, well over 10 years. And I can remember, I'm going to give a little bit of the background of that. I remember the first time that Ross and I went over 10 years ago, and we had been asked by Vineyard, Vineyard USA, to go and sort of check out the work there and see what has been going on. And as we went, and they had a little gathering in Manila of leaders from across the country who hadn't gathered in many years, and we had in our mind we were going to do some teaching on just sort of classical, prayer ministry things and how to just some basic Vineyard things that we were going to teach on. And we got in that place, and upon talking to different ones, we realized, oh my gosh, these people are really suffering and really hurting. And what we had planned would not really be the appropriate teaching to do. And so beforehand, we listened to them. And when we got into the room, there were probably 18 or 20, I want to guess, national leaders there. And they had experienced a whole bunch of things in the recent years. They had experienced a missionary that had involving money and some sexual allegations. Things had gone very south for them, and so they were really hurting from that. And they had experienced a number of their national leadership team had gotten jobs overseas, and so they had left the work there, and so they felt kind of abandoned in various ways. And we just listened to them, and we listened to their pain and their grievances, and we prayed and listened some more and cried and just sort of tried to comprehend what was going on here. So it was like a whole twist in what we had thought we were going for. But we came back to the U.S., to the National Vineyard team, and Ross reported back to them sort of the condition that we had found things in. And also there had been some vineyard work that had gone on there, and because of some disruptions in the church in the U.S., they were no longer supporting or doing things. And they had been the gathering point. So it was just a rough time. So at that point, Vineyard USA decided that they were going to put a whole bunch of money and effort and energy into the Philippines. And so for the next 5 years, they sent a team of people to go and do like leader care. And so they provided retreats for this group of about 14 to 16 leaders and took them away on like 4 and 5 day retreats and just listened to them, allowed them space for their relational connections to be restored. There was prayer for healing, and there was just input at that time. And it did something really beautiful in that team that was in the Philippines. And that went on for about 4 or 5 years. And I participated with that team that went a couple of the times, as did Ross. Not all the times, but we really, there was lots of laughter and healing and tears and all that sort of stuff that happens in that context. And it was really precious. There was a deepening through that time of their trust and relationships with one another that had really, it was like something really gelled back together, and there was a strength that came within their own team there. And then at about that time, some of them came, if you guys remember, some of you were here. What year was that they all came to Holland? 2015, a group of about 18 from the Philippines came here and stayed in you guys' homes, and we just had a wonderful time, and that was kind of the beginning of our church really getting involved. But this was, when we went this time, it was the first time that the whole national team, that team of leaders, had gathered all the workers that could make it into one place and did a conference. So that's what we were stepping into. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background, because for me, that was one of the most significant as I was there were about 200 people. There were probably 30 foreigners, some of us from here. There was a team from Switzerland, a couple from Thailand, from Indonesia, but it was mostly folks from the Philippines. And it was a magnificent, joyful celebration. And the theme that they came up with was called Beyond Borders, which was absolutely perfect. And, what a great topic for all of us. But Beyond Borders was the topic of it. And, with the idea of taking the gospel, taking the good news of Jesus Christ, his love and hope, beyond all the borders and barriers that we know. And I must say, I was stunned as I observed all these different leaders and churches now working together so amazingly. So many times I would just watch what was going on the stage at the conference and just cry because there's such unity and joy. And I've got to tell you, it's an island nation. So the sort of the geography of the Philippines. And each one of those islands, there's so many different components to it. There are people that are working in cities. There are tribal people. There are island people. There are jungle areas. It's such a diversity of people. And so every single ministry that was represented, they couldn't be more different. And, the education level and, all that is so different. But there was such a powerful and beautiful working together that was, for me, was because of my history with going at different times, was just stunning for me. And so that was one of my highlights. And I think that when I think of it, I think the common denominator of all the work that we observed was a strong working with the poor. And there are wealthy in the Philippines, but there are also many, many communities that have desperate poverty that I have never seen the likes of in the U.S. And they have such significant works among the poor there that it's humbling and it's amazing to watch and to be a part of. But that's what our WOW team, the 6 of us, joined in at that conference, and then we visited one location together, which I hope somebody is going to share a little bit about that. And then we all sort of went different ways to visit different works that were going on. So. And now I'm just going to turn it over. I think we've got our timetable here, so we're going to keep going. And Cadence is up.
Thank you, Barb. So we flew into Manila, and then we flew to Davao, which is at the very southernmost part of the island of Mindanao, which is the bottom island. And one of the first things we did in Davao was visit Pastor Ian and Maggie's church, I think it was the Metro Davao Vineyard. And from there, it was a small church, tin roof, cement floor, and then we walked throughout a lot of the slums and like very impoverished areas, dirt floors, mud, sewage running through on the sidewalk. It was not really a sidewalk, it's a mud walk. And that was just kind of unnerving just to see all of the poverty and what they were living in. And something that really struck me was later that day, Sophie and I and some of the Seattle Vineyard youth, because we were with a team from Seattle as well, we got dropped off at a youth conference, which was maybe like 50 youth gathered in a room, maybe like a quarter of this size. And it was just like rock band, absolutely jamming, like super like loud worship, and youth band just like shredding on guitar. It was pretty sweet. And it was really crazy for me to see, like, I like recognized some people in the room that were worshiping that I'd just seen their home and where they live. And I was like, and they're like worshiping with such joy and passion. And that was just really powerful to see. And that like even in such poverty, they have such joy and relationship with God. So that was really cool to see. And then later during that day, that was a Saturday, the first Saturday we were there, I got to connect with some of the musicians, and that was a really heartwarming connection, because I love music so much, and they were so talented. and we got to jam, and I taught them the 12-bar blues, which was fun. And that was really like the main purpose of going for at least me and Sophie, was really just relationship building and getting to know people, seeing the faces and hearing the stories. And I really felt a connection with those musicians, especially at the Vineyard House of Prayer, which is where that little youth conference was before the main conference, especially with a young man named Marcus, who's about my age, and Patoy, who is the electric guitarist, and Papa John, who was the father of Marcus and like the worship director there. And he also like runs a music school, and all of the youth that were leading worship also like taught music lessons, and it was just really wholesome. Marcus was showing me videos of his like hip hop dance lessons that he runs, and like his like hype worship dance videos, which were super cool. And maybe someday you can look up Vineyard House Prayer like on Facebook, I think, and find it. But that was just a really beautiful connection. And one other thing that I wanted to share was just about how we can use the resources that God has given us to do work for the kingdom. We met this woman named Tita Bing, Tita Bing. There are two Bings. Tita Bing is the one that I'm talking about. She basically has an inheritance of a lot of land from like her father or grandfather, who was a doctor and bought a bunch during World War II when it was cheap, and then urban centers built up all around that. So it was a lot of valuable land, and she basically, there are several churches that operate on property that she owns, and she just has given her land and a lot of the wealth that she has to like provide for the monetary needs of the Vineyard House Prayer churches, which was really cool. We also got to see her directing a whole celebration dance at the conference. The first worship session on like the Monday evening of the main conference, there was a like celebration dance with like maybe like 15 or 20 Filipinos all dressed in like their like tribal garb, and it was just a really beautiful working together worship experience. And I just felt like we were really like included in all of that and able to experience the beauty of what they have. And it was just really great to have them share that with us. So yeah, that was something that was really impactful for me, just getting to know people. And there's so many other stories and so many people that we met. And I'm sure if we sit down sometime, we could talk more about that. But Sophie's going to come up and share more about some things that were impactful to her. And I'm sure she has awesome things to say.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you this morning. I have a few photos that I queued up. I first want to say just thank you to everyone in the church and beyond who gave money so that we could go to the Philippines. We just were really blessed by everyone's generosity, and we really saw God's provision through your generous giving towards this trip. And we were happy to be able to give offerings at a lot of the churches that we visited, and just be able to go there. So you can pull up one of my pictures. Okay, so these are some cute children. And so that same day that Cadence talked a lot about, where we went to Ian and Maggie's church, after we visited that little neighborhood and prayed for people there, we took a drive to go visit the Bajau people in Davao. And so you can see they're on the coast, and just around these children, there were a bunch of fishing boats. And so the Bajau are a type of tribal people in Davao, and they live in these really cool elevated huts. So you can show, yeah, it's a little bit hard to see, but basically they have these really cool bamboo floors, and you walk up this like little ladder to these huts that they make. And so it was basically a whole village that looked like that. They have very standard construction that they do, and it's all just like that. And so this community of people was just a huge blessing to me and to our team. There is a Vineyard ministry there that works with the children and helps feed some of the children. They'll give them meals a few times a week, which takes some of the pressure off the family. They'll help for school expenses, and they just give the children a place to go to relax and do homework and hang out with each other. So we got to visit some of the children in that community, which were in that photo. And something really meaningful that we did is one family welcomed us into their home. So we walked up the little ladder steps, and we all took our shoes off, and we're all sitting crisscross applesauce in a big circle in this cool house. And the mother and father are sitting towards the back of the room. And then the son, Levi, is sitting close to me near the door and the ladder. And we just start to hear about Levi, our kind of advocate. Her name is McCall, and she works with the youth program. And she was telling us Levi had just graduated 10th grade. And so for them, 10th grade is like a big achievement. They have like a real graduation ceremony. So it's almost like graduating high school here. It's like a big accomplishment. And he was the first in his family and the first in that specific community to graduate from 10th grade. So that was just a really big deal. And as soon as McCall started talking about him, his mom just started weeping, and she just felt so blessed by this program that had supported Levi through his education, and just so grateful for God's provision in her life and in her family's life. And so she's bawling, Kevin and Linda are crying. We're all getting really emotional just sitting here in their home, and it just was such a beautiful experience. And we offered to pray for them, so we pray for them, and then they say, "Oh, can we pray for you?" Which is just so, like, I don't know, almost unexpected, because we came to like bless these people, and here they are blessing us and encouraging us. They gave us all these like little bracelets that were just a real cute like reminder of that community and reminder to pray for them. So that was a huge blessing, and I just love what the Vineyard's doing there. And then I have one more picture. I'll just say one more thing. So this is me and Mommy Faith. We're at the conference. It's the first day. I did her hair in some braids right after this picture. And I just wanted to say that Mommy Faith was someone that I connected with in our time there. She's Papa John's wife, and she kind of helps lead this youth program. And she just was a real blessing to me. And we had talked and prayed together, and she had expressed similar sadness that I felt of, when people leave the church, or when you pour into people and they leave the church. And she had been experiencing some of that. And we prayed together, and it just was interesting to see someone in such a different stage of life and place in the world, and still they're having this heart for the people that they love, and just connecting about that was really special. So those were just a few situations that really stood out to me. And again, I'd love to talk about it at another time if you want to get coffee or you're just curious. And I'll pass it off to Linda.
Good morning. So as Rachel led us in worship this morning of He is worthy of it all, it took me back to February when we were at the MLM, and I was wrestling with the idea of going to the Philippines, and someone prayed for me and said, "Is he worthy of it?" And so then people encouraged me to be myself, and I'm like, well, I can do that. So I went, I said yes, and I know I have some pictures up there, so I probably have more than anybody can because I took probably over 500 pictures and I couldn't narrow it down to like 3. This was just a group after church. Like, everyone welcomes you so much. They are so happy to have you there, and then they feed you tons of food everywhere you go. And so this was after church. We went to the beach. Can we go to we have to go through these quickly. So I was overtaken by the beauty, not only of the people, but of the country. So I have lots of flowers, and I don't even know what these are called, but they're look like wax pine cones, but they grow naturally there. So the little girl, we had gone after church to this property that this one place is believing God for, to be able to build their church. And she just really worked her way into my heart. And she would be like, "Can I come home with you?" I'm like, "I don't know. Will you fit in my suitcase?" So she was really sweet. And then Ian is the man who was given to us as our driver. And every time I thought of us saying goodbye, I started crying, because I just love this man and his posture to serve us. And he was in pain. He had an inflamed knee, and he just went above and beyond, would take our laundry to get cleaned and just exchange money and drove us. And now I almost think Chicago traffic's nothing after being with him in the Philippines. Oh, this is a type of bird of paradise. There were just such lovely things. There's a waterfall. Can we see what else is there? That's okay, I'll switch over to, so we were assigned seats at the conference, and my heart felt to pray for these ladies, and I really didn't know who they were, and I prayed for each of them, and then found out that they were from Kitapawan, where we were going, and one was actually Pastor Benny's niece, who was a church plant. She was a pastor, and so I have another picture of, like, Ian walking the plank. You had to get to some of these churches. Sorry, this is a little like popcorn. So there's the plank that even Barb and Ross and we had to cross to get there. Yep, the Seattle team, they bought barongs, and they were just lovely people, and we connected with them. And I don't know if Kevin's going to mention it, but they have joined the partnership with us. So yay. And what else do we have? Some people went jumping off cliffs, and we went in the water. And I have to say, though, like, when I was encouraged to be myself, like, this wasn't, I had a lot of struggles physically. We climbed this rock island, and I sprained my toe, and then one day my stomach hurt, and then my throat was sore, and then I had congestion, and I had a cold sore. And so it wasn't all just wonderful. But it was very beautiful, and as I said, people, just the theme of they love Jesus, they're very welcoming. They were so happy to have us there. I really saw the importance of going there and not just sending money, that we were building relationships. People would be like, "We're Facebook friends." I'm like, "We are? Who are you?" Like, because of Kevin going so many times and Amy, people kind of knew who I was. So there we are. And Ross is after me.
So we sang in worship, "All my life you have been faithful." All my life you've been so good. And I'm very aware that my family's here, all my children are here today, and my sister and brother-in-law, who I love deeply. This trip was just so powerful for me to be a part of this trip. Because way back in 2016, I took Kevin for the first time and a guy called Paul Vanderkyle for the first time. And it was just probably a week, really, they spent there, or 10 days, something like that. But what's happened since that one short-term mission trip is mind-blowing. And a lot of people say, what good is it going on a short-term mission trip? Well, let me tell you, God can do amazing things in a very short amount of time that lasts. And so one of the people we worked with was the Cebu Vineyard. Cebu's the second largest city, and 25 years ago, they planted a church in Cebu from the Hong Kong Vineyard, led by a lady called Jackie Pullinger, who had a ministry within the walled city of Hong Kong that was full of gang members, heroin addicts, and she went in there as a young British lady and started doing things that eventually the Hong Kong government recognised. She cleaned up that whole area, and she's been doing drug rehabilitation to this day. Cebu, one of the drug addicts came there for rehabilitation. His name's Abner, and he got completely clean, and he was sent with his Dutch wife to plant a church in Cebu amongst the drug addicts and the gangs there 25 years ago, and they're still there doing the stuff. And my first photo is a picture of Lorega, which is where they started, and that's really looking nice. It was filthy, it smelled. On the Monday, Barbara and I walked through there with a couple called Minnie and Bernard, who have been there for 25 years, going into this place every day. We could barely stand the stench for an hour. They've been doing this for 25 years. And Minnie in particular, she walked through, she knew so many people, and doors would open and we'd look inside and the house was smaller than this stage, and there'd be 5 little children and a mother in there because the husband was either dead from drugs or in prison. We saw gang members that had face tattoos strung out as we walked through there, very dark. We stopped and met a mother who was holding a little baby about the size of your baby, Adam, and the baby had boils on its head because of just the lack of hygiene. We went around the corner and there's a little boy that was about, I guess, Mia's age, and he was naked and he had a big burn on his leg from a motorcycle, and it was open and it wasn't being treated. And Minnie and Bernard just was so gentle and compassionate with these people and just prayed for them. And I gave some money and said, can we do something for this little boy's leg? You know, I couldn't bear. So here we are in this slum, dark. These people have been coming for 25 years doing this. To me, they're saints. The whole church, when we go to the church on Sunday, this church is where I took Kevin and Paul Vanderkaal to the same church. We go there, we aren't speaking. We are introduced, we are welcome, but we're not like the big white people that come and speak. We get there, they have a time of ministry, and they come over and pray for us. And we were just so blessed in this place. So that was on Sunday and Monday. We're in this place called Lorega. The next day, we go to Veriticor, which is an organization that didn't exist when I took Paul and Kevin there. But Paul Vanderkaal started this company called Next Door Photos, which has about 53 local owners all over the US that take photography and drone photography floor plans for real estate agents. They take in that media, and overnight it's shipped to Veriticor in the Philippines. That was their first editing location. And they take people out of places like Lorega. They work with NGOs. Can you show that next photo? And they put them and train them. And this is a girl from that area. Her name's Geraldine. Look at the life that she's having now. So the Cebu Vineyard cleans them up, gets the prostitutes and the drug addicts really cleaned up, and they go through rehabilitation, and then some of them can apply and get jobs here. Veriticor, that Barbara and I went to, now employ 300 people from that background. 300 people. Don't tell me a short-term mission trip can't do something. Those local owners in the US taking photography, they produce so much media that we've had to open another editing lab in Kathmandu that has over 100 people, and in Kenya, Nairobi, that has over 200 people, all rescued from human trafficking. Show the next photo. We got a privilege to spend time, Barbara and I. The lady sitting next to me is the social worker. Well, actually, the bookend ladies. They're both social workers. They have this, they don't only employ them, but they give them life skills, teach them about how to handle their money, teach them how to use government resources, how to report abuse. And those 4 girls sitting next to Barbara, those 4 girls there sat and told us their stories, where they came from. Some of them have been abused sexually by their own family members. Many of them have parents that have either been incarcerated or died because of drugs, and they are supporting their siblings. These young women are professional women. And I'm just telling you guys that it really matters what we do. A lot of people go, oh, missions, you know. Listen, you have no idea how dark life can be for some of these people. What would it be like growing up in a place as a young girl, wondering where I can hide today because I could be attacked? What would it be like knowing, how am I going to feed my siblings? I'm the adult here and I'm 11 years old and I've got 3 little brothers and sisters. But the Cebu Vineyard, 25 years commitment, it just blows my mind. Talk about redemptive lift and how much it's needed in the world today. So I was overwhelmed with that, and it does matter. It does matter. We can do something. Mother Teresa said God counts in ones. But what I've noticed is when we do something, the impact that it has, these 300 workers working at Veridicor, the impact it's having on their family and their family line is phenomenal. And so they're not only becoming professional young women, but they're just rescuing their whole family, in some cases, their whole neighborhoods and tribes. Kevin, you're up, bro. You like our matching t-shirts? We all got these. Let me tell you, 3X should be about 6X in the Philippines. Just if ever you go, bring your own underwear because it's impossible to find it there.
Wow. You know, for me, it's just an incredible joy just to hear the stories that have already been told because for the last 9 years, I've been going. And it's so wonderful to share that with others who've never been and hear their experience and what God was doing in them, what He was showing them, what they saw. It's so significant. So a couple of different things. I think the first picture I want to put up is Linda and I. For me, this is really sacred to me because I got to share this trip. And that is so amazing. I've done it solo. I've done it with other team members, with Ross, and but to share with Linda was huge. So that's my first heart connection right there. The second heart connection, there's a picture of the conference. And it's kind of looking at the crowd. So you can see the people and the expression and the worship that's going on. And for me, the backstory to this is for the last year we've been talking about and planning and budgeting. And to be perfectly honest, I had no idea how we were going to pull this off. Like, all I could see was what we couldn't do, but I was part of a team that was like, hey, this is God's vision, He's going to provide. And I was like, boy, I sure hope so, because this is going to be a train wreck if He doesn't, right? And so here we are. I'm like in the middle of one of these worship sessions. And it is like the veil is thin. And the presence of God is there in such a sweet way. It's like 120 decibels. It's crazy loud and just so much going on. But yet I felt such a sense of just like the sky just sort of opening. Somehow God showing up by His Spirit. And I just wept. It was like surreal here we were after all this work, all this planning, and me of little faith, and here we are in the middle of this thing, and it's happening, and God's showing up, and there are pastors and their wives and other leaders and elders and workers in the ministries all there together. So one of my great joys in life is like introducing people to other people and then sort of backing out of the way and let them sort of have their space and just let that unfold. And it felt like this entire meeting was that, like from early morning at breakfast and just the way people were interacting and connecting to after some of these evening sessions, like people just lingered and shared and were there praying for each other. It was just amazing. So there should be a photo of Pastor Benny standing by a sign called Christ Vineyard. So Pastor Benny, he may stand like this tall, but he is a giant when it comes to faith and trusting God and planting churches. And if he thinks God has called him to do it, let's do it. Like, there's no limit in his thinking, right? Somehow God's going to make a way. And so they just began moving toward whatever it is that God is calling them to. So he's probably one of the most prolific, in terms of mindset, church planners in the movement. I mean, he is constantly thinking about how do we plant another church. He just loves the local church, and he loves to see people gathering in those spaces and experiencing Christ's love. So for me, the opportunity after the conference to go to Kitapawan with our whole team, that was a super, super sweetheart connection. Pastor Benny and his wife Elvie, their family, Gay Marie, the pastor at this particular church plant. I mean, honestly, this was sort of like the front porch on someone's house. Like, it was just this little space, but it was a sacred space. They had it all set up nice, and we're there in the middle of a rainstorm, and we can't even hear each other hardly, but here we are just praying and just thinking about how they'll take whatever little thing that God entrusts them with, and it turns somehow into fruitful ministry. It turns into lives being transformed. And I was constantly challenged by their faith, by their heart, that would just not let anything get in the way of following Jesus. I was also touched by our trip to Matina Aplaya. It was the first time in that particular community amongst the Bajau in the city of Davao. And when we sat there, and Levi's mom was praying, and she just starts weeping. Oh man, like that conversation turned into something so sacred. To be invited into their home, and for them to honor us in such a way, and then pray for us, and then they wanted to give us these bracelets. Like, there was so much of the heart of God just meeting us in that space. I was grateful that we got to experience all of that together. One other spot that was pretty huge for me, I had gone with Amy back in 2017 to the city of Butuan, and there was a small church plant at the time in Buena Vista. And there's a picture of a couple of kids that were taking a selfie. Maybe you can pull that up. So this is looking out the front door of the church, right? You're looking at somebody's laundry at the little house next door. And like, it was a little bit, it kind of looked like a shack in a shed sort of thing. And kind of a nice floor, but it was like mold on the ceiling. And it was just pretty decrepit space. Everything was going wrong that morning. Nothing seemed to want to come together. And so there were some testimonies that were being shared about the conference, and kind of the service began to unfold. And then we just started to worship. And as soon as we did, wow. You know, it made me think about how Jesus came into this earth, right? It wasn't in some palace or some amazing, huge, awesome place, and trumpets were blowing in there because men recognized his grace and why he was here and what it was about. It was such a humble place. Being in a manger, right? Like, it's just, God was going to show up for him. The angels were going to show up for him. And it was very much like it in that place. Like, God showed up. I mean, Linda, you would attest to that. It was just incredible. We were both weeping through the majority of this service. So I'm struck by a couple of different thoughts, and I'm going to kind of close up here, but I want to invite a couple of comments.
That picture of, I just wanted to mention that picture of Benny, the man who he said is really small. That was the church that we've wanted to go there to that location. We've never been there to visit them. And so it was a really big deal that we came to visit them. And if you guys will remember, a couple years ago, there was a typhoon. No, an earthquake. It was an earthquake that knocked down their house and their church, totally. And so they were living under, I think it was a mango tree. And a tarp, and that's what they were living under. And so you guys, this little community and a few others, gathered a bunch of funds and sent to them to help rebuild. And so that was one of the reasons why, I wish we had a picture of that, because they took us in, and when we arrived at their place, they honestly, and they have a bunch of kids too, sort of young adult kids, and they took us into every room and wanted us to show the house now that has, it's cement and it's, roofs, and of course right next door is like a ceiling and some, not even walls on it, and that's their church space. It's right hooked onto their thing, and they were so grateful to the support. And I just wanted to pass that on to you guys, that we were able to see the fruit of a lot of you sacrificed and gave towards that. So their house is built, and they've got a church going great guns, and Kevin preached there, and it was awesome.
One of the things I don't always say, but when I go there, a lot of times they want me to preach. They want me to share, which, that's not exactly what I'm signed up for, right? I'm like, I can encourage people and I can show up and I can be consistent, but I don't know about all that. But one of the things I almost always share, at least in some way, are the 4 pillars of WOW, right? So this idea of spiritual formation and God in our daily lives, the power of the Holy Spirit, intentional relationships, like the things that we sort of have ingrained and woven into our community are things that I share about almost all the time that I'm there. So in a way, we sort of have all these sister churches that have some WOW DNA woven into them all throughout the Philippines, everywhere I've had the opportunity to share. But I continue to be struck by 2 thoughts, kind of in closing. How much they do with so little. It's extraordinary. I would use that as an excuse to do nothing. I know I would, because I do it here. So it's like, wow, like this, they talk a little bit about an orphan spirit or, just a sense of lack or not being able to, giving some reason for why not. But it's like they just trust God in incredible ways. And I would wish that on all of us, to take some seed of that into our own hearts and lives and be challenged by that kind of faith. This idea that wherever God is guiding them, he's going to provide as well. And I find that hugely encouraging. Whether we're talking about, God supplying all our needs, like, we've all had seasons of lack and challenge and other things. It's like chronically massive and huge there, and yet God keeps showing up for them time after time after time. And so there's a grace that they have to trust God to take care of whatever it is that he's calling them to do. And I pray that we'll tap into that same sort of incredible, resilient, buoyant faith that regardless of how life may push us down, like we're just going to continue to follow hard after Jesus. So that's one thought. And then there's this idea that they will pray and they will fast and they will continue to do so until they just really get a clarity and a sense of what God is leading them to do. And so I think maybe there's something there for us to think about, whether that's as a community or whether that's individually in our own hearts and lives. Maybe we're struggling to get a sense of direction or where we fit or what our purpose is. But I really feel like in this trip, I just got a real sense of how they were tapping into and getting God's heart and his mind about very specific kinds of contexts that they would have. Like they were getting a download from heaven, and it was like helping give them some instruction and direction. And as they moved in that direction, they would sense that God was blessing it and bringing life to it. And it was just really, really beautiful. I can't take credit for this. Barb wrote this in an email to us. I really want to steal it, though, because it was such a good statement. The idea that we would use what we've been given to the glory of God and for the benefit of others. Whatever God's entrusted us, whatever giftings, whatever abilities, whatever passion, whatever resource, that we would have and carry that same heart to use it for his glory and for the benefit of others. You know, this idea of prayer and fasting and getting this vision, it's so clearly shown in Scripture time after time, whether we think about Nehemiah and rebuilding the wall and really getting God's heart for his people and making those kinds of sacrifices. Or Daniel, you know, waiting the 21 days, fasting and praying before he got his answer from God and God sent the angel. Or Jesus, just how many times he would get away to really get the Father's heart. And then he would just do whatever God was showing him to do. Like this sense of getting this download from heaven and then moving based on what it is. And, you know, it seems so simple, I think it is. I'm not saying that it's easy, because I think we live in a world here in the West that's so distracted. And there's so many things pulling at our minds and at our affections and at our thoughts. But the sense of just oneness and just pursuing God in the middle of all kinds of chaos and crazy was so beautiful and so inspiring. And I hope there's something of that, some spirit of that perhaps we've brought back with us just because we sent such a large group that it would somehow impact us that way. So there's some sense of invitation in all this. I'm not even sure how to articulate that. So as a closing, I just wanted to kind of open it up to anyone else on the team, any sense of God's heart, or obviously, Pastor Benjamin, whatever you have in your heart. But I would pray, Lord, open our hearts and our eyes and our minds to the beauty that surrounds us, the resources that you've given us, and help us to see and understand what it means to walk out your heart in our context, just the way our friends in the Philippines are walking out your heart for the communities that they serve. Elevate our thinking, Lord, beyond ourselves, me and mine, or whatever that is, Lord. Turn our hearts truly to what is on yours.
I think it's obvious that we as a church are invested somehow in the Philippines. We just are, you know. It's part of the journey. It could have been anywhere in the world, but that's it. And I just sense that one of the invitations that I want to make you aware of, Kevin leads the Philippine Partnership, and it's a growing partnership of Vineyard churches around the US, some of which the Seattle Vineyard this morning are talking about their trip there, and Massachusetts and Boston and Pittsburgh. We've got partnership with people in those places. But, you that sit in the rows here and come to this church, I don't know if you're aware, but you might want to think about maybe once a month, I'm going to just give some money above and beyond my tithe to the Philippine Partnership. Maybe that could be a way you could get invested. And maybe you might think, you know what, I'm not going to buy that Starbucks for $5. I'm going to sacrifice one of those, and maybe you say, that's $20 a month I'm just going to put. But there's something about that sort of commitment that is really important for us to do, you know, so that when and if there's a need, we've got something there for us, you know, because there will be. It's unfortunately, with the way the climate is going, Philippines is in the front row for climatic impact all the time. It just is. So I wondered about that being maybe something you would consider and just saying, hey, I'm investing in that. The second thing is, I asked Kevin this morning, when's the next trip? And there is talk about one. And he said September next year. So that was the other thing. Like, I'd love to see some of my family members go there maybe. But if you think about September next year and how much per month you'd need to put away so that you're ready to go in September next year if it was, that also makes it a lot more doable than finding out, you know, in August you think, oh, I want to go. So I just want to put those two little thoughts in your head as maybe an invitation.
The other thing, Kevin can tell us more. There's a way to be a part of the organization that Charlene leads that helps do some of the sponsorship. I know there's a lovely picture that Caden sent us of him with the now young man that we've been supporting for years through this social program, really. And so you're going to have an opportunity to share more about that soon. I just wanted us to refer back to that prayer that Rachel prayed, the take it prayer. That is a prayer that we could pray here the same way that our friends in the Philippines pray. And so we close with that you would take, Lord, and receive, and think about what these things mean to you. All of my liberty, all of my memory, all of my current understanding, my entire will, all that I have and call my own. You have given it all to me. To you, Lord, I return it. Everything is yours. Give me only your love and your grace. That will be enough. No matter how much we have, that prayer is just as powerful. And I was thinking, you know, the things you do here might be like what Ross was doing, introducing Paul Vanderkaal to a thing that's happening in the Philippines. That may be what's happening in your school or your work, in your job. That may be what's happening in your family. And so I just bless you in that spirit to have faith that offering your life and everything about your life as a response to God's love for you has great, great, great impact. And so I bless you to live into that, to lean into that this week. Amen. Thanks for coming today, everyone. Thank you so much for being a part of our family. We will gather up the chairs and things today.